let's dive into one of the most revolutionary ideas in modern biology. What if I told you that you're not a single person? That when you look in the mirror, what you're really seeing is a bustling, cooperative, and incredibly intelligent community. That's right. You are a community of about 50 trillion cells. That's a number so big it's hard to even wrap your head around. I mean, that's more cells than there are stars in our galaxy. And every single one of them is a living, intelligent being. And they're all working together, collaborating to create, well, you. And according to the pioneering cell biologist Dr. Bruce Lipton, this isn't just some nice metaphor. It is a biological fact. Your cells aren't just competing. They're cooperating. It's their collective intelligence that allows you to live, breathe, think, and thrive. This one idea changes, well, everything. So to really get it, let's start by busting a few myths. All right, first up is the big one. This is an idea that has dominated science for decades. This belief that our lives are basically predetermined by the genes we were born with. So the old myth is something called genetic determinism. It basically says your DNA is a fixed blueprint and it controls your life. You get what you get. But the new reality, which is backed by this incredible science called epigenetics, it tells a completely different story. It reveals that the environment, and even more specifically, your perception of the environment, is what's actually in the driver's seat. This means you are not a victim of your heredity. You're actually the master of it. So how do we know this? Well, it all started with a really groundbreaking experiment by Dr. Lipton. He started with just one single stem cell, and he let it divide and divide into Petri dish until he had thousands of clones that were all genetically identical. I mean, every single cell had the exact same DNA. Okay, so next he took these identical cells and he split them into 3 groups. He put each group into its own dish, but here's the kicker. He changed the culture medium. Think of the culture medium as the cell's environment. It's kind of like the lab version of blood. So to be clear, the genes in all 3 dishes were exactly the same, but the environment was different. The results were, honestly, they were stunning. In one environment, the cells became muscle. In a totally different environment, they formed bone. And in the third one, they turned into fat cells. Now remember, their genes were all identical. The only thing that changed was their environment. This proved that a cell's fate was controlled entirely by the signals it got from the world around it. So the huge takeaway here is this. The environment signals the cell, telling it which genes to turn on or off. The gene is like a blueprint in a library, but the environment is the contractor who goes in, pulls the right blueprint off the shelf, and decides what to build. Okay, this leads us right into our next big myth. For years and years, every biology textbook taught us that the nucleus, the part that contains all the DNA, is the command center, the brain of the cell. But wait a minute. If the genes are just blueprints, just waiting for instructions from the environment, then they can't be the brain, can they? So what is running the show? What part of the cell is actually reading the environment and making all the decisions? Okay, get ready for this because it's pretty mind-blowing. Scientists can do a procedure called enucleation, which is a fancy way of saying they physically remove the nucleus from a cell. Now, if the nucleus was the brain, the cell should die instantly, right? But it doesn't, not even close. It keeps on living, moving around, eating, breeding. It even communicates with other cells. In fact, a cell without its nucleus can survive for months, doing all of its normal, complex, coordinated stuff. This is pretty much definitive proof. The nucleus is not the brain. You know what it is? It's the reproductive organ. It's the factory that holds the blueprints for building new parts when they're needed. The real command center, the true brain of the cell, is its skin, the cell membrane. This thin outer layer is the intelligent interface between the cell's private inner world and the constantly changing world outside. So how can a membrane act like a brain? How does it actually listen to the environment and translate all that information into action? Well, it all comes down to this really cool process that explains how our cells are constantly eavesdropping on the world around them. The scientific term for this is signal transduction, but don't let the big words fool you. All it really is the process of information flowing from the environment through the cell membrane and into the cell to control its behavior and its genetic activity. So think of it this way. The cell membrane is studded with these little proteins called receptors, and they act like tiny antennae. Each antenna is tuned to a very specific environmental signal, like a hormone, for example. When the right signal comes along and plugs into a receptor, it's like a doorbell ringing. That ding sends a message cascading through the membrane, triggering a chain reaction inside the cell that carries the instruction to all the machinery.
And this is where it all becomes incredibly personal. Because for the 50 trillion cells inside your body, what's their environment? It's your blood. And what controls the chemistry of your blood? Your brain. Your brain translates your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, and your perceptions into chemical signals. So those signals become the environment that tells your cells how to behave. You see how this just completely flips the old central dogma of biology right on its head? We used to think information only flowed from the DNA outwards. But the new biology shows us, no, the flow of information starts with the environment. It flows inwards and controls the DNA. Your perception of the world is at the very top of the chain of command. So let's bring this all together. We are not just a collection of mindless bricks. We are a vast, dynamic, and unbelievably intelligent community. Think about your body as a distributed computer network. Each of your 50 trillion cells is like a smart little processor, constantly sensing its environment and making decisions. And together, they create this amazing collective intelligence that's constantly working to maintain balance and health, adapting to every single signal it receives. Which leaves us with one profound and, I think, incredibly empowering question. Since your thoughts and perceptions create the chemical environment for your cells, what signals are you sending them? What instructions are you giving to your own biology at this very moment? The answer to that question, well, it could change your life.